The AEV Conversion ZR2 Bison Transmission Skid Plate Kit is a pretty straightforward system. This system does require that you have a ZR2 Bison, and if you don't, it will require that you have the ZR2 or Z71 equipped with the rear transfer case skid plate. When you open up the box, you're going to find each of the contents wrapped with your typical downloadable instruction guide and your front mounting plate, which basically this will allow you to bolt the front section of each of the bars to the back of the front skid plate. And then following immediately, you're going to have all of the bars with the one bar that kind of spans across two because there's no hole provision on the rear transfer case skid plate. When you get all these laid out, you'll see that they're all made of a 1-inch DOM, so something that's fairly solid with an anti-corrosive coating. Getting everything installed and laid out is pretty straightforward again. You're going to crawl under the vehicle and basically lower the front skid plate. In this case, I do have a diff drop, so that's why you're seeing some spacers in there. The AEV skid plate system is compatible with a vehicle that is equipped with a diff spacer. And as you can see here, I placed the spacer between the cross member and that oil skid plate. I'm removing those, putting the cross member mount plate all the way against the cross member, putting my bushings underneath that, moving the skid plate down, and using my longer bolt. Of course, if you're not using any spacers, the oil skid plate just bolts directly to the plate using the factory 2 bolts. When you're ready to start installing the tubes, there's only two things to consider. There's the standard single bar tube, and there's one special variant of that that has a Y split at the end. Other than that, the tubes are all identical, and the installation process is pretty straightforward. You're going to pass a carriage bolt through the hole in the front plate, a second one through the back plate, and because you have a nylock nut, it's easier just to get them finger tight and then work through tightening them down once you have all of them in place. When you're ready to hit the number 2 tube, this is the specialty tube that has a Y. So what I like to do is move to the number 3, put the number 3 tube in, get that started, drop the number 1 tube, place the front end of the number 2 tube with the Y back into the front plate, and then as the instructions state, put the number 2 tube Y under the number 1 and the number 3 and bolt up the complete assembly. I know it sounds a little complicated, but it is pretty basic when you look at the overall format, and really it's pretty self-explanatory when you look under the vehicle. With the first 3 bars loosely assembled, you're ready to move to the other side, and as per the instructions, it's a good idea just to work from the driver's side to the passenger side. Now I'm going to spend a little time talking about carriage bolts. Obviously, as you're getting through this, you're going to realize it's a little bit more difficult to work with the carriage bolt, as you're going to have to do all of the tightening from the place you have the least amount of space. There is some science behind the madness here, as we are looking at something that is a protective device that is supposed to keep debris and damage from hitting the parts on top, which means that these bolts passing through from the bottom to the top are actually exposed, and because of that, they wanted to use a carriage that did not have a hex or a Allen key or something to that nature that could be damaged from being ground across, rock faces or whatever's underneath the vehicle. While it is a little bit more difficult to use the carriage bolt, there's definitely some reasoning behind it. Again, take your time, just work your way from the driver's side to the passenger side, and then get ready to do some tightening. And this is really where you're going to spend your time and a little bit of creativity depending upon your availability of tools. With everything installed, I came back with a cordless 3/8 drive ratchet here that basically I could fit into the tight areas, and in some cases it was from the inside out and from the outside in, and I can tighten up the bolts to the point where I would have to come back and only make a couple of passes with a ratchet in my hand torque, as the cordless could not get everything up to full tightened spec. So take your time with this. You're going to have to get creative, and in some cases I was stuck with using a ratcheting boxed end wrench and a quarter turn at a time to get that bolt all the way through. So this is a bit time consuming, but the finished product is worthwhile. As you can see here, you'll have a nice protected transmission area that's going to keep the debris out, as well as keep all the rocks from hitting the bottom of that transmission pan.